Practice makes perfect by Neon Zangetsu Chapter 3 Just a Little Bravado. Dad, I found out what I wanna be when I grow up. Really now? And what's that, John? I wanna be a huntsman. Oh dear. Ark, just a little bravado. Juniper's children were strong, no stronger than strong. They were powerful. Little Saffron had taught her that lesson when she lifted a boulder at a tender age of 6. 6! Who could do that? She could leap tall buildings in a single bound and run like the wind, so much so that it fell to Naruto just to catch her when she ran off, and she did, often. Honestly, it wasn't even her semblance. On a certain level, that should have made Juniper worry. She didn't. Left to raise such children alone, she might have, but she wasn't alone, so why worry? Every mother wanted their babies to live happy, healthy lives, and they would. Saffron had been but the first. After her came Sabrina, born with piercing violet orbs and whiskered cheeks. Then Sable, a girl with striking silver eyes. Really, even she was starting to see a theme there. The letter S seemed all too prominent. Even now, she watched the three of them play through their definition of the word was somewhat stilted. They were still trying to get those bells from their father's belt. Even now, they chimed softly as he evaded them, clinking in the air as grasping hands tried and failed to tear their silver ornaments from their crimson strings. Naruto weaved among them with supernatural ease. It was a wild waltz that could only be conceived by an utter madman, a series of sharp twists, and turns that ended as quickly as they began. Stranger still, the girls were laughing. "Get him! I've got his arms! Somebody get his legs!" Naruto slammed down a smoke bomb, throwing off their vision and sending them shrieking for cover. "Remember," he called into the haze, "it's only natural that the strong should lead, but the goal should be strength, not necessarily leadership." She heard a yelp as he caught one of the girls. "If one is truly strong, leadership comes inevitably as such." Sable went sprawling out of the cloud and sprawled flat on the ground. "You need to work together to catch me. Nothing less will do." Naruto was a gentle father. He could have beaten them down and taught them a lesson, but instead chose a softer touch. "Aha!" Saffron clasped her hand and banished the fog with the Wendo Jutsu, only to find Naruto right in her face. A simple tap served as a reminder of death, painless, but sharp enough to teach them a lesson all the same. Dead. His finger stabbed Saffron between the shoulders, unbalancing their eldest. "Ah!" She rounded on him with a hiss. "Dead," Naruto snagged. "Dead." Sabrina jerked back, massaging her head with a whine. "Dead, dead, dead." Sable slammed a fist into the ground, splinting the earth. The near miss sent her sister stumbling. "Girls!" Juniper raised her voice and flared her semblance, claiming their attention. "Be careful! Don't hurt each other!" A faint kick low in her torso claimed her attention. Again! Juniper touched a hand to her round belly with a small smile. The child within stared at her touch and kicked anew. This next one would finally be a boy. She knew it in her heart of hearts. She wasn't quite sure how she knew, only that she did. She had a feeling about him. Sometimes Naruto wondered how it all happened. Sometimes it felt like fate was mocking him, and other times he just found it funny. He never thought he would fall in love, and yet he had undoubtedly fallen for Juniper. Hook, line, and sinker. He hadn't meant to be a father. Fate had other plans. Little Saffron was born only a year after their marriage. He definitely didn't plan to have many after her, but he loved the little boogers and everyone that followed her. He certainly didn't expect their children to be so powerful, let alone give him a run for his money. And yet here they were, putting him through the ringer, with family techniques, no less. Rasengan, a quick sidestep took him out of harm's way as a tiny body swiped past. It snapped him back to reality, and he whistled a little as his daughter missed. Her hand slammed down into the space he'd occupied, her jutsu grinding the ground to find a powder. His girls were good, very good. He'd seen more than enough jutsus in his lifetime to impart the basics to them. From there, they'd taken his each and every lesson and then run with it and lapped up all the techniques that he taught them and made them their own. Their reaction speed was on point, rather scary, considering they weren't even adults yet. Very good, he applauded Saffron's attempt. You've always got the hang of it again. His eldest straightened with a hum, pushed down her blue jeans and pushed a strand of brown blonde hair out of her eye. Hold still and let me hit you. Whiskered cheeks twitched into a smile. Wouldn't be much of a lesson if I did that now, would it? As the eldest of his merry little brood, Saffron was the eldest and by far the strongest. Her punches left bruises. In terms of sheer strength, she might have given Tsunade herself a run for her money some day, but for now she was just a child, and children made far too many mistakes. Case in point, when she dove at him, he caught her by the wrist and flung her over the shoulder. She sailed away into the trees. With an outraged yelp and crack of aura, they both knew she'd be back. A little tussle through a tree or three wasn't enough to keep an arc down. Next, he called. Not a beat later, Sable slammed into his left arm and latched on like a limpet. Ha! She crowded, preened up at him in her at him like he was her trophy. I got you. So you do. Naruto lifted his arm, but she clung on with surprising tenacity, like the child she was. His daughter gripped back at him, legs dangling in the air. But now what? He cocked a brow at her. You trapped one of my arms, but I still have another. See? He wiggled the finger of his right hand. What do you plan to do now that you've caught me? What's your brilliant scheme? I'm sure you have one. Violet blue eyes narrowed as her tan face grew pale. I didn't really think I'd get this far. The other brow rose. Well, you know what comes next, Sable whimpered. Daddy, no. Daddy, yes. His arm shot up. Have a nice flight. Daddy! As she shot into the clouds with a shriek, Naruto watched her go with a grin. All right, now where's your twin? His ears twitched for a keening sound of 1,000 chirping birds was his only warning. Blue eyes bulged, the honed instinct shifted his center mass to the right, allowing a wild blur of red and orange to hurtle past. A glowing length of chocolate chains hooked around his ankle and yanked as she flew by, trying to reel him for a second strike. He caught it and yanked, hauling them forward instead. His reward was a startling yelp, followed by a shock of red hair as his attacker tumbled to the floor. Sabrina, he clicked his tongue in admiration. What have I told you about using Chidori in family spars? She struggled up to a knee to not to, but it's the only way I can hit you anymore, and most people can't recover from a hole in their torso. Drop it. Her arm lowered, the spark fell. Okay, Papa. Honestly, Sasuke would be rolling in his grave if he knew he'd passed down this technique. He took some bitter pleasure in that. He might not be able to use it himself, but he'd watched Kakashi train often enough to understand the basics, and his daughters were oh so clever. A jutsu like this was not quite as safe for someone without the Rasengan as he would have liked, but he trusted in their genes. Anyone who knew their trick would have a very nasty surprise for their enemies, and with Sabrina's chains, she could reel her enemy in with ease. Somehow he had the feeling Kakashi would approve. Come on, don't sulk. Here, he reached down and pulled the sullen girl to her feet. Let's wait for your sisters, then we can continue. Sabrina was the odd girl out among the trio. Unlike her blonde siblings, she had been blessed with flowing red hair and striking silver eyes, unlike any other. Moreover, the pale pallor of her skin was a striking contrast to that of her twin. A more paranoid man might have thought Juniper had an affair. Nope, not him. Red hair ran in the Uzumaki bloodline after all. So did choker chains and whiskered cheeks. That she was their daughter through and through. Anyone who said otherwise would be spitting teeth. Kushina would have loved her. Juniper liked named her girls with the letter S. It seemed thus far he hadn't fought her on it. Far be it for him to argue with the pregnant woman. So long as she didn't go naming anyone Sasuke or Sakura, he didn't much mind. Still, there were some lines, some painful lines, that he wasn't willing to cross. Assuming they ever had a boy, he was leaning towards the name John. Speaking of which, eee! Got you. Naruto looked up and snagged a sable out of the air as she came crashing down, spun to bleed off her momentum, then swung her onto his shoulders. That was awesome! Her grin outshone the sun itself. Lithe legs kicked against his shoulders with thinly veiled glee. Again, again! Maybe when we visit the beach, he grinned as an exhausted Saffron stumbled back into the clearing covered in mud and dirt. I'll take turns throwing you into the water. How does that sound? They went absolutely mad. Yes, all right, dibs on first. Naruto laughed and drew them into a warm embrace. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. This was his family, his life, his love, his heart. These girls had brought him happiness in a way he'd never known before. Whatever he might have been in his world, none of that mattered anymore. He was happy here. No matter what came, he would protect them. He would teach them to be strong and keep them safe from the horrors of this world and all that it threw their way. If someone hurt them, they would suffer. If someone broke their hearts, death would come for them. And if anyone sought to use or abuse them, you guessed it, they would die screaming. Take the girls. The blue eyes snapped open with a hiss. Juniper stirred beside him. Dreams again? He shook his head. Just another nightmare. It's nothing. She shifted a little in bed, pulling him close. Then let me distract you, dear. Her mouth melded with his as she pulled him back to warm sheets and her waiting embrace. And the time wound by once again, like so many leaves in the wind. Almost before Naruto knew it, he had a son. Sword met fist on a moonlight night. Contrary to Naruto's expectations, the impact actually rattled his arm a little. Lightning dust shot raced up the length of his arm, loosening the muscles there to turn what would have been a devastating blow into merely a powerful one. It wasn't enough to stop him. Rather than risk a retreat, he reached out and grabbed the blade before him, uncaring as the edge bit into his palm. Blood bubbled between his fingers. He grit his teeth against it and pulled. A quick yank hauled his attacker forward, even as he lashed out with his free arm, Rasengan in hand. Yet another Rasengan met it head on. As one, the twin spheres clashed, large and small smashing against the one keening whine of chakra. Dirt and debris sprayed into the air. Wind lashed at them, kicking up a mighty gale. When the blue eyes met azure orbs across the way, narrow and intent. For a moment his foe held their ground, face intent with restraint, but only for a moment. Alas, their clash didn't last. Son yielded to father and gave ground as they were overpowered. Brave of you, boy! Naruto grinned down at his attacker as he inched closer to victory. I would have thought you learned your lesson by now. What can I say? John matched his smile, blue as the light whiskered cheeks, dimpling in a grin that showed only a hint of pain. I'm a slow learner. He really wasn't. He taught him better than that. John Arc's son was no longer a boy anymore, but neither was he quite a man. Not yet, caught somewhere between the gangling stage of puberty and adolescence. He nevertheless held himself well, although his rippled blue jeans were spotted with dirty sweat and his orange key a torn, tattered mess. He conducted himself with strength and pride, as expected of an arc. He did not expect his son to let go of the short sword. His son stifled the Rasengan in his hand and released the blade, causing him to overbalance as he broke the clash. For a wild moment, Naruto found himself pleasantly surprised. Then there was pain. In a single seamless moment, John drew a second sword from the scabbard, twisted his blade aside, and brought it crashing down at his shoulder with a whirl of light. Crozea Mars slammed into his collarbone, slid off, and kept going, sundering soil like so much glass. The earth ruptured with the sheer force of the strike, physically sputtering flame. Naruto sputtered in a rare moment of surprise. hacking and coughing, briefly blind in the haze that followed. John's voice chased him through the smoke screen. How'd you like my new secret move? Not bad. Naruto rubbed his eyes as he peered into the smoke. This would be easier if you just used your shadow clones. Never. The retort was immediate. I want to beat you fair and square. Fine. Have it your own way. He dropped the act, raised a hand, then stabbed it behind him. And I still see you. Rasengan, a boyish yell answered him as his son spun away. By contrast, he had held back this time. His jutsu banished the smokescreen and smashed John down into a tree, but no more. At full power, Rasengan could shred through aura like butter. It barely winded his only son. It showed too, because the boy didn't look much pleased as he climbed back to his feet. And that, my boy, he hummed, is why we never let our guard down. Still, a glimmer of hope broke through his son's anger. I managed to hit you back there. That's got to count for something, right? It does. Naruto grit his teeth to hide a scowl when his progeny smiled. But I already told you, you'll have to beat me before I let you become a huntsman. We've been over this, but I'm stronger. His boy bowled outright, stabbing Crocea Moors into the ground to level himself upright. You said so last week. I said you're stronger for someone your age. He raised a finger. There's always someone stronger, John. Stronger than you, maybe. The Timeless Shinobi shrugged. Even I'm not invincible. His son lunged. A lazy backhand sent him sprawling into the dirt. See? He sighed. You can't beat me when I try. I'm humoring you. John struggled upright again, staggering a little this time. Naruto winced when he saw the blood running from his nose. Blast, he hadn't meant to hit him that hard. We're not like normal people, John. He spoke slowly, trying to make him understand. I haven't aged a day since I met your mother. Hell! A clawed hand scratched the back of his neck. Haven't you noticed she isn't aging all that quickly either? She was normal before I met her, before they'd been together more times than he could count. Now she's something more. So are your sisters and you. They're the same. He held out a hand. We're going to be around for, well, a very long time. It's important that you understand that. But you love Mom with all my heart. He caught a faint sweep of his legs and drove a fist between his son's ribs. But it doesn't change the fact that our family, is different. People don't like different. Here it was again, the crux of their training, the reason why John was so determined to improve himself. The boy wanted to be a hero. Under any other circumstances, Naruto would have happily embraced such a dream. The world needed more heroes, but this world wasn't his. Even he could tell his children were stronger than they should be. Chakra was an amazing thing, but chakra blended with aura and the miracle of a semblance that made something new, and the world feared that which it did not understand. John lunged at him. It's my dream. Then it's a stupid dream. He flung up his hand and batted him away with the rush wind. You'll excel in Beacon, sure, but what happens when you draw attention to yourself, to your family? Still, he stood. Then we'll protect them. A muscle jumped in Naruto's jaw. We won't always be here. One spinning kick sent his son flying, only for him to bound up again, sword swinging. Blood sprayed through the air as he caught him with a savage punch. Why are you making me do this? He snarled and flung his son's sword alike. You're fighting so you can watch everyone around you die. Think, John. He tapped to the side of his head. Think, you have so much potential and you want to waste it like this? Anger reared its head for the first time in an age, and he flung his arms into the air. You can't be a huntsman! He caught the blind jab with his offhand and pushed the shield away, and stormed after him. Your sisters understand that. Why don't you? He limped to one knee. It's my life. No, it wasn't. You will outlast every fragile, insignificant huntsman on this planet. A right hook sent his boy spinning to the ground. You may even live to see this world crumble to dust and blow away. He was still struggling to stand when a kick sent him crashing through a tree. Everyone and everything you know will be gone. What will you have after 500 years? You dead? One last time his progeny stood. Naruto felt his anger gutter out like an empty flame. Tear blue eyes regarded him. I'll still have you and Mom, and he choked a little, and Saffron, and Sable, and Sabrina, and all the rest. This was his son, his boy. He was beating his boy for wanting the same thing he had. Something ugly coiled in his stomach. What am I doing? If he wanted to be a hero, I should be helping him, not hurting him. John knew how to use that sword. Juniper had taught him well, and he'd been practicing for years hence. Even with those injuries, John, he fought with poise and grace, weaving a line of steely death before him. No clumsy swings and strikes here. Every move was calculated, each strike poised to inflict maximum damage. Against a huntsman level foe, he could actually prove a threat. But here, against someone like him, he was woefully lacking, and they both knew it. Damn it! Blue eyes flashed red as he missed again. Stop holding back and fight me like you mean it. Fight me! Fine. Naruto ducked and overhead swipe and sailed into a low stance, one hand dragging across the ground. For a moment, just a moment, he reminded John of a wild beast. His entire body glowed golden, eldritch black markings glowing over gleaming shades of saffron. Credit where he was due. His son didn't yield. His shield fanned out, and he took a stance, intent to meet him on. Such a brave little son he had. Always wanted to be a hero, always willing to go the distance for his dreams. He would do his best not to break him. Remember, he beamed as the last of the cloak crept over him. You asked for this. Then he grinned and launched forward, bounding on the balls of his feet. Brace yourself! John tried. He really truly did. His shield snapped up and took the blow head on, like the knight he'd always wanted to be. But it wasn't enough. The sheer momentum behind that swing swept up into his guard, forcing it back and out of alignment. As such, he was woefully unprepared for the right hook that caught his chin. Alas, a single swipe sent him flying. Naruto caught him before he could reach terminal velocity. If you want to protect your family, if you want to be a huntsman that badly, you need to be strong. He gave him a hard shake. Stronger than strong, and for that you need to train. John regarded him with teary eyes. Then you mean pick up your sword? We have work to do. Hop to it. Their training would continue long into the night. Previews. Think, John, think. He ran away, didn't he? How about this? John lifted the desk with ease in one hand. Is this better? Did you want it over here? Pyro blinked in surprise. Oh my, Gang whistled. Hot damn. Stop pulling her ears. And who's gonna make me ya wet? No, ow. Who made you God, little man? John grabbed Carden by the scruff of his neck. Not the mace, not that uniform, nothing. He swung him down, slamming the bigger boy into the table. You want to scare people? Fine. I could use a scarecrow. His forehead slammed against Carden, teeth gone sharp and eyes blazed red. You're going to be my personal message board. You're making me angry. You won't like me when I'm angry. Show me. Blue eyes blazed red. Yes, show me. Get angry. Let it all out. Show me what you are. You want me to come to Atlas? Nope. Respectfully, that wasn't meant to be a request. The youngest shrank back behind Juniper's skirts, blue eyes widened with fear. Daddy, what's wrong? Naruto exhaled slowly, his breath emerging as a thin plume of steam in the morning mist. First John runs off. Now this. The specialist stepped back half a pace. I'm afraid I must insist. Men, detain them. I cannot believe this is happening again. He began to laugh. It's absurd. I just can't. Why don't you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result? Isn't that the definition of insanity? Are you mad? His eyes were red now. Juniper realized, his body beginning to glow. You know, one day the last one of Adlesian idiots will ask me, Naruto, why did you wipe our continent off the map? His head rose, eyes slitted and intent like nothing Clover had ever seen. And you know what will I say? He bared his teeth in a snarl. It's because you're all so fucking rude. His fist slammed forward and the specialist crashed backwards. End of chapter 3.